Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's always a little bit coming home. I remember the times I studied here, and it's been a good experience. So I would like to present to you, if that works. If it doesn't, we'll do it. Maybe someone can sort that out? Now it does. OK, fine. So I would like to give you first a brief overview of how we actually are set up in government, and then talk more in depth about the policy level and how we actually see SCiON. So in case you find that boring, please just listen to the next sentence. Why is it important? It's been mentioned the World Wide Web came from Switzerland. That's more than 30 years ago. And I think we should have something new coming out that changes the world. So with that, let's dive very quickly into how we are set up in government and why that matters. So in general, in government, we have set up cyber in three main pillars: cyber prosecution, which deals with everything that has criminal activities around it, and then also cyber defense, which is the military and the intelligence defense, and cybersecurity, which in short is all the rest. We have two groups that care about these topics. We have the core group cyber, which is within government, and we do also have the steering committee for the cyber strategy, which includes industry, but also education and research. And ETH Zurich, for example, is represented there. And there we really discuss the topics that are important for Switzerland, and of course, science could be a very important thing. And then I'm responsible for all of that, and I represent these initiatives within the Federal Council. Long story short, I also lead the National Cybersecurity Center, which basically, if you find a vulnerability, you can report it there. How ETH Zurich did, for example. It's been the first vulnerability we actually took over and collaborated with them to make it go away. It's called Blacksmith. You can look it up, and we also handed out a CVE number. And you can also report cyber incidents. So why do I say that? It's important to understand that we see many incidents, and we see why they happen. And in the public discussion currently, I see one main challenge is we always talk about defense mechanisms in a way of incident management. But what if we actually would start building secure systems? Think about that. I talked a little bit about achievements. So what have we seen, what have we done last year? We released, for example, an application for the COVID certificates. A lot of care went into testing the security, because you wouldn't use that application if you wouldn't trust it. It's a highly distributed system. There are hospitals, there are test centers that are connected. They have their own systems. They have their own networks. They communicate to the main servers that we have, and that's all over VPN tunnels, the public internet. There is encryption involved, but it's very heterogeneous. What if we could just, within days, spin up a network on an existing public network that gives us certain security guarantees? That would save us a lot of money, would save us a lot of hassle, and it would actually make us benefit from that. Also, quite often when we discuss matters, it's not so much about the absolute security level that we need to achieve. It's more about adding a little bit security. And if we could, for example, control where traffic goes through, that would already at least give us some security for the legislation that applies to the communication, and that it doesn't end up abroad. It's not secure, of course not. There's inside threats, there's other possibilities, you know, as well as I do, but at least it gives us more control, if nothing else. I'm not even yet talking about the added benefits. And actually, it will also allow us to change the impact of existing vulnerabilities. There's an image that we published for how to address the Log4j vulnerability. And I think some of you might have spent night and day before Christmas to get this fixed, right? What if you could, on an operational level, for some of your infrastructure, just limit the impact by easily adapting the exposure of your systems? right? And whoever works in a huge tech company generating multiple 100 gigabits a second should know what I talk about. Now, I want to briefly talk about the model of scale in cybersecurity in Switzerland. So one thing is we have Melanie that was founded in 2004 and has been integrated in the National Cybersecurity Center. For those not familiar, this is basically a government public-private partnership where companies can share information about attacks or threats anonymously with their peers through us, and where we support them in case of attack and where we try to prevent systemic cyber crisis by actually trying to estimate the severity of risk and threats. Now, unfortunately, while this model is really good and accepted abroad, it also doesn't scale. Why? We're very good at doing everything baseline security on a technology level, but we're not very good from a government perspective to understand the business processes, for example, in the finance sectors, touching many players. We do not know by heart how systems are affected. How does an attack on a transaction system affect the systems that run the stock calculations? We just don't know. That's true for other sectors, wastewater disposal. That's true for agriculture and many, many others. And it's not feasible as a government entity to build that knowledge, right? So we are moving into a pilot system where we say, let's build sectorial little Melanies, if you want to, little NCSCs that are so-called information sharing and analysis centers that actually know these things. Because you only know this if you are working in the sector. And that's my very strong opinion. You can only do security above baseline if you know the business processes, if you know the legislation, and if you know the impact. Everything is baseline. Everything else is boring, to be honest. So in order to have such a system, that's nice if we can collaborate, and exchange information. But what if, and I'd like to show you this graphic, which, by the way, I didn't create, that has been created from some of the employees at the Swiss National Bank, which I'm very grateful for this graphic. It came out of a discussion. So what if we could build some sort of security domains within Switzerland for critical infrastructure? Again, we have a lot of vulnerable systems. They're not very well set up. What if we, at the minimum, can limit exposure? What if, at the minimum, we can have defined interfaces where they go to the public internet or to their VPN or their other technology where they actually communicate with others? What if we just can limit the attack surface, get additional security guarantees, and through the properties even gain in efficiency and actually enable new business models, like just-in-time transactions where this was not possible before? And therefore, I think from a policy level, we should carefully evaluate whether that's feasible. We have e-government services, we need the municipalities, we need the cantons, we need the government. Why not encapsulate these systems by using technologies like SCiON to increase the security guarantees step by step? Then convince our partners abroad to adapt it, and maybe, with a little luck, have a worldwide adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian. We have just a couple of questions, if you can accommodate. Sure. How do you think the Swiss federal government could help drive SCiON adoption?
Yes, so a very good question. So, I mean, I think you're well aware the Swiss government is maybe not the most dynamic, right, in sorts of technology adoption. That has many reasons, right? There are also good reasons for that. However, so first and foremost, I do think we need to make it possible that we use new technologies easier, that we actually easier collaborate with startups, because it builds trust in the startup ecosystem if the government adapts it. And I also think it's legitimate to spend taxpayer monies and feed it back into a potential good Swiss industry. I think the second one is really, to have small use cases and start with those. And I think there is my message to not Anapaya itself, but generally the startups in Switzerland. Try to sell your product for business people, not through technology, because that's what they do abroad. That's what we still struggle. You can't go to a client and ask them to figure out the business case. That's what you should present. And then last but not least, I think we need to discuss different financial models, different risk assurance models. Quite often the problem is really not having the project itself, but how do we actually keep to operate it, and how can we maintain it, and how can we make sure that we get the support we need at the scale we need.
Thank you. Perhaps one more. We asked this question to our panelists, technology panelists this morning. What is your vision for SCiON?
Well, the vision is very simple. It's worldwide adopted, right? So I think, you know, it has to prove itself, right? So it needs to work. It needs to work at scale, so we'll see that. The competition will be very hard. Software-defined network providers, if they don't become partners, that's a direct competition and they can throw money at the problem. That's a very harsh reality. Money dominates what goes through. It's not the technology. Honestly, I do think at the minimal, I would like to see SCiON in security critical application across the world.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Florian Schütz.